Hello everyone, my name is Michael SK and welcome back to Higurashi When They Cry, Chapter 8. We have a new student, and it's Hanyu. Hanyu is real now, and I'm not really sure why, but there have been some hints that have popped up in the fragments that kind of show that, oh yeah, people can now communicate with Hanyu. And, well, here she is, which I think is going to be a major step forward in trying to, I guess, defeat Takano and secure victory and safety over the village. And making sure that nobody dies out of the main characters, honestly. Right now she's trying to get involved with the club, which means she has to pass a trial. Oh, and we're playing Old Maid. I can't read.
Ch.8 は自分の入部試験の恨みが混じりまくりなのです。
ほらほら、ケイちゃん、そんなこと言ってていいの？羽生、ケイちゃんの右のカードで上がれるよ。
上がりましたのです。
とわー、きたねー。こうなりゃ本気モードで行くぜ。よくもこの俺を怒らせたな。羽生、お前初日の下校からいきなり尻尾付きブルマの首輪付き四つん這いで帰宅したいのか？
あらあら、それはむしろ圭一さんにこそ似合いましたよ。
Okay, I'm gonna be real with you guys. So I'm entering this recording session not feeling all that great, and the screen shaking all the goddamn time is really making this worse. Oh my god. Jesus Christ, stop, please. Have mercy.
僕も圭一に恥ずかしい罰ゲームをしてやりますのです。
いい提案だね。おじさんはそいつになるよ。
なんでいつの間にか俺包囲網が完成してるんだよ。上等だ。てめえら全員四つん這いで下校させてやるぜ。
I don't know what's happening anymore. They are playing every sound effect that's been used in Higurashi. I guess that was it. I guess I could have finished this off in the last episode. Oh well. I tried. Sometimes I just, I can't guess correctly when things are ending. Though I do try.
バンケットより後方。スピーチあと一人で乾杯に入ります。準備できてるね。
後方 OK です。内部全然聞こえないんで、スピーチが終わるタイミングでコールをお願いします。
いいかい。各宅にビールは10本ずつだよ。ちゃんと自分の縄張りにスムーズに運んでね。
Young waiters with bow ties got bottles of beer ready for a toast. There are several dozen tables with white tablecloths on them in the banquet room. Approximately 8 people are sitting at each table, so there are at least a few hundred people there. And we're really switching gears, aren't we? The banquet room is teeming with excitement. There are many plates with different kinds of food on each table. A sushi platter, a sashimi platter, a fruit platter. Also along the wall, there are cooks ready to serve fresh sashimi. All the guests appear to be well-mannered gentlemen, and obviously there are notable people from different fields. The huge and beautiful chandelier above them clearly tells us that this hotel holds a status good enough for those famous people. An elderly gentleman is giving a long speech on the stage before making a toast. Usually people don't like such long speeches, especially if it's before a toast. But the guests are actually excited with his speech. Well, maybe fervor, was a pleasant way to put it. It was probably more accurate to say their excitement was bizarre. Anyway, Japan accepted the demand for unconditional surrender, and the day they did, the Pacific War ended. In other words, even if they had to take care of further business, The war ended that day according to international law, and from that day on, there was peace. Therefore, if any troops invaded Japanese land during that peace, that would be an encroachment against Japan. No matter what the Soviet Union says, the northern territories are Japanese land, and it should be clear to everyone that they invaded illegally. Hear, hear. And now they want to settle by returning a mere 2 islands to us? Who do they think they're kidding? Listen, Habomai, Shikotan, Kunashir, and Ichirup are Japanese territory and all said very wrongly. Their total area is equal to an entire prefecture. What would you think, excuse me, if the Soviets invaded and occupied one of our prefectures? Would you settle for just getting half of the prefecture back? No, you wouldn't. You'd have the entirety returned to you. Yet the Soviets are brazenly sitting there claiming vested rights to the land. This is no joke. We must strongly oppose this to the bitter end. Return all the northern islands. Our nation must demonstrate unwavering resolve on that point. Thunderous applause filled the banquet room. All the gentlemen agreed and expressed that they felt the same way by cheering him on. In all that hubbub, there were 2 people standing by the wall who didn't seem to fit in with the rest. They were wearing sharp-looking suits, and while a little too old to be called young men, were certainly young compared to all the elderly gentlemen in the banquet room.
どうして政治家ってこう説教臭いというか若者軽視というかこう偏るんでしょうね。
簡単なことさ。政治家が一番欲しいのは票だ。票は有権者が投じる。だが20歳以上が全員投票するわけじゃない。投票率のほとんどは退職して時間にゆとりがあり、その分政治に関心の高い高齢者が占めている。
となれば高齢者層をいかに取り込むかというのが選挙のポイントになるわけですね。
The war only happened 40 years ago. In other words, the generation that's interested in voting is the generation from before the war.
うちのおふくろよく空襲の話をします。昔は水道橋のあたりに住んでて空襲で家族を全員失って焼け野原を一人さまよったなんて話をいつも。
You guys ever watch Grave of the Fireflies?
そうさ。
That shit was sad. Our parents went through the war. They shed their blood, sweat, and tears, believing it was for the good of the nation. We lost the war, but they believe the war still brought about change that serves as a foundation for the peace we have today. I hear that a lot. That if Japan hadn't fought in the war, the Asian countries would still be Western colonies. There was no way we could have won. But we needed to fight in that war or something like that. In that case, no matter how much they preach pacifism, politicians can't ignore the pre-war generation. War is bad and we should never fight again, or never again fight a war. But that war was necessary. Unless they say things like that, it's like they're denying the very likes that generation lived.
なるほど。政治家も票を取るのに大変なんですね。
そういう主義主張も本心でしているなら一意見の主張として立派だと思う。だが彼らの票が欲しくて表向きだけ調子を合わせてる卑劣な政治家もいる。そういう迎合的な政治家が後を絶たない限り解雇主義は永遠に終わらないのさ。
そうして若者とお年寄りの意識の格差は多分1000年経っても相変わらず。
They'll just keep repeating that the war was justified yet regrettable every time an election takes place. When will our country ever be freed from that cycle?
簡単さ。若者がちゃんと選挙に行け。そして安易な迎合にごまかされずちゃんと政策を考えてるやつに投票しろ。実現可能な政策だぞ。
ああ、いますね。明らかに実現不可能な公約を掲げてる候補者っています。あ、赤塚さん、F 択ってあれじゃないですか。
あのご婦人だな。行くぞ。
The speech had ended and the elderly gentlemen were giving the man on the stage a standing ovation. The 2 men walked through the crowd and approached an old lady in a kimono.
はい、私ですけれども。
昨日お電話で約束させていただきましたものです。赤坂と申します。
I wonder what's going on there.
主人はね、 ずっとずっと日本のためにと身を粉にして働いてきたんですのよ。それなのに
奥さんの胸中深くお察しします。
This wasn't really anything out of the ordinary. Nobody could remember if there had been a donation or not, so a handful of politicians were questioned. As a result, some came up with a scheme to blame a sickly elderly man who had already retired. With only a short time to live anyway, he was the perfect fit for them. The elderly man had already been sick in bed, and the shock of his friends betraying him had taken away his will to live. The only thing his wife could do was to simply watch him suffer. She kept crying while telling the men about her husband's achievements.
ご主人の無実が間違いなければ必ずや裁判官は正義の判決を下すでしょう。大丈夫です。濡れ衣は必ず晴らせます。
そんなのは分かっています。だって無実なんですから。でもね、判決が出るまで主人は持たないんです。お国のためにとあれだけ働いてきて、こんな気持ちで死ねなんてあんまりじゃないですか。あれじゃあ死んでも死にきれません。
Akasaka nodded and tried to find the right words to say to her. His colleague rummaged through a pile of paperwork behind him. The papers were filled with fine print, and it would be hard for an onlooker to tell exactly what they were. However, the way he was looking at them made it very clear that they contained something important.
赤坂さん、こいつはすごい資料です。金の動きが完全に網羅されてます。
Akasaka gave him a signal to remind him that this wasn't the place to be looking through those documents.
奥さん、この他には書類束のようなものはありませんね。
ええ、主人の金庫に入っていた文書はそれで全てです。どうかそれで恩知らずな連中に一泡吹かせてやってください。あれだけ主人に世話になっておきながら。
奥さん、この文章の内容には一部ご主人にとって不利益な内容も含まれていますが。
ええ、政治はね、綺麗事だけじゃないんです。私だって政治家の妻ですのよ。
ご協力を感謝します。この書類は必ず巨大な不正を暴くために使用します。
一つだけよろしいですか。それを公表するのは主人が亡くなるまで待ってもらえませんか。
The paperwork Akasaka received was something her husband intended to take to the grave with him. Something that shouldn't exist in this world. If it went public, her husband's name would be disgraced. Akasaka nodded.
わかりました。誓ってお約束します。
Vast public funds were moving from Kasumigaseki? Let's go with that. The funds were issued to sub-branches to carry out national policies. But various ideas over those public funds always came together, and there was never an end to those trying to poke a straw into it to suck it out like a mosquito. Excess dividends, cordial patronage, profits for organizations that benefited themselves. Many financiers approached and adhered to officials and politicians hoping to earn those gains, and the bureaucrats constantly indulged them. That's how Japanese corruption works. These illegal pipes form bypass after bypass in Kasumigaseki, siphoning off public funds for their profit. To find and destroy such pipes is, of course, in the national interest. But eliminating illegal expenditures? I know what this fucking word is, god damn it. Expenditures, there we go, isn't as simple as all that. There are important people connected to those pipes, and when those people are investigated, a major political scandal takes place. The reason why the government doesn't investigate such illegal expenditures is not only to protect vested interests, but also because they are conscious of the damage these scandals can cause politically. To put it more succinctly, the government can't endure the pain of pushing pus out of a wound. The closer the exposed subject is to the top, the greater the pain faced by the government, and that affects the cabinet approval rating. The closer the subject is to the core, the more extensive the damage to the heart. The secret investigation Akasaka was leading went as close to the heart as it got, and could cause a collapse of the administration from shock. Akasaka was tipped off that a huge amount of public funding was leaking out through an alumni organization of the 7 imperial universities, so he and his colleagues had been conducting a secret investigation into the matter for a long time. Okay, that is interesting. This is all, I think, somehow connected to maybe how Takano was getting her funding. Maybe not exactly directly connected to that, but this is the same sort of grouping that we learned about in the very beginning of the game. There's some sort of connection here, I think. His target was tightly knit, but he learned the wife of one of the organization's senior members bore strong resentment toward them after her husband was made their scapegoat, and he managed to contact her. And because of that, he had gotten his hands on extremely important information. Politics. I don't get any of it.
みんなご苦労さん。だいぶ外堀が埋まってきたようだね。特に赤坂くんが入手した資料は相当ショッキングなものだよ。ずいぶん苦労したでしょう。お疲れさん。
いえ。
The small meeting room was filled with boxes that were, in turn, filled with documents. A whiteboard was filled with cramped writing, too. A few of the investigators in the meeting room, which was also filled with smoke, were reading the documents intensely. Their intimidating manner clearly indicated that they were police officers with a great deal of experience. Akasaka was one of those men. It had been a while since Mamoru Akasaka was transferred to this department. When he worked on the case of the kidnapping of Minister Inukai's grandson, he had been a rookie, but by now he was an experienced investigator. After a knock on the door, an elderly man entered the room. Everyone straightened up all at once.
室長、お疲れ様です。お疲れさん。立たなくていい。楽にしてくれ。諸君に今日は素晴らしいプレゼントを持ってきたぞ。カノ。お前を息子の授業参観に行かせてやる。
The meeting room was filled with sighs tinged with exasperation and resignation. It certainly wasn't because any of them hated getting to go to Parents' Day.
やっぱりな。そろそろ頃合いだと思ってたんですよ。くそ。
Akasaka's colleague complained. They had been so close to getting to the root of the issue. They had such strong evidence. Akasaka on his part wasn't too disturbed. This had happened several times in the past, and considering how hot the documents he obtained were, it was easy enough to predict. The case was suddenly transferred to another department. That means their investigation ended here. The new department was supposed to continue the investigation to expose injustices, but that's never happened once before. It was just an excuse. The investigation had been terminated because of pressure from above.
くそったね。俺たちが今日まで捜査してきたのは何のためだったんでしょうかね。
膿を出す痛みがどの程度か測るためだろうな。その結果、痛みに耐えられない規模だということが分かり、荒療治を断念したってことだろう。
In that sense, their hard work wasn't wasted. Because of it, the investigation was terminated. Akasaka understood that, but his colleague wasn't yet mature enough to understand. Of course, Akasaka's sense of justice was displeased by this. He felt frustrated with his superiors who had hesitated to expose the truth. But he was mature enough to know not to say that out loud.
資料の整理と引き継ぎについては今後向こうと調整していく。とりあえずみんな長く休んでないだろう。5時を待たなくていいぞ。残務整理は明日話し合い。あと振り替え休暇の消化をしよう。ちゃんと消化して神さん孝行しろよ。主査は俺と来てくれ。以上だ。
Oh, is this how, I'm assuming that this is how Akasaka gets the vacation time to go to Hinamizawa. Though his long, secret investigation left a bad taste in his mouth with its resolution, he managed to earn a holiday until the next incident arrived.
じゃあ、室長のお言葉に甘えますかね。みんな、今日は早く帰って休みな。
こういう時、早帰りすると 不倫の現場に出くわしたりしちゃうんですよね。
バカだな。お前知らないだろ。赤坂さんとこは熱愛夫婦だぞ。
Well, she's alive in this world.
毎晩別当の公衆電話からラブコールかけてるの知らないのかよ。
赤坂んところはいいよな。うちの女房なんてそりゃそっけないもんだよ。
Akasaka smiled bitterly as he gathered the documents in his hands. One of the pages fell to the floor. It was a page from a huge pile of papers documenting illegal expenditures. They exposed the illegal expenditures, that's how you pronounce the word, of the Alphabet Project. Yep, there it is. The research team for the next generation of hardware in the Defense Agency. It was entirely possible that this project was created in the first place for the purpose of funneling these illegal expenditures. When he saw the paper, one thing caught Akasaka's eye. He picked it up, looked at it, and tried to remember. It was a list of people who illegally received public funds. It was also a list of retirees who were still very much in love with money. There should have been no connection between those people and Akasaka. However, there was one thing that caught his attention.
入江診療所。
As soon as he said it, all sorts of memories resurfaced. Yes, the Irie Clinic. When he was working on the case of Minister Inukai's grandson's abduction, he got into a scuffle with the suspects and became injured. He was taken to the local clinic. As he recalled, the name of the clinic was the Irie Clinic. He started to remember one thing after another. His very first experience was wading into the muck. Or wadding, one of those words. It was burned into his mind like a fresh memory, and he could vividly recall everything that happened. His daughter was about to be born, and he really didn't want to go to Hinamizawa. He met Ueshi, who taught him a lot of important things. He also met a girl in that village. Her name was... yes, Rika Furude. That was it. How long had it been? How old was she now? As he remembered her lovely smile, he also remembered the ominous predictions she made. She had predicted that if he didn't go back to Tokyo, goddamn, I'm dying, something terrible would happen. At the time, he took it as nonsense, but he felt something odd about it, as if it was a divine omen. Then he had remembered Yuki, who was about to give birth. He had become concerned that something terrible would happen to her, but he couldn't just leave and go back to Tokyo. That's why he called her right away. He told her something would happen. He told her to be very careful until he returned. Yuki had laughed and told him he was being paranoid, but that phone call indeed saved her from a calamity. Akasaka had found out about that when he visited her after returning to Tokyo. A few days after his phone call, a janitor was seriously injured when he stepped on a loose tile on the stairs on his way up to the rooftop. He also heard afterwards that Yuki had a habit of going up to the roof for a walk every day. But because of his phone call, she had stopped doing it. If he hadn't called her, she would have been the one to step on the loose tile. In other words, Rika Furude's prediction had been correct. There was no proof, but Akasaka still believed that he was able to save Yuki only because of Rika Furude's prediction. He'd intended to call and thank her for saving Yuki, but the busy days that followed put it out of his mind. Don't worry, that happens to me all the time too. Rika-chan. He wondered if she was still doing well, if she was still smiling. Only one way to find out, man. Akasaka remembered the sad predictions she made on that night under the moon, while still wearing that smile. That's right, she'd said something. She predicted someone would get killed on the night of the festival every year, and that on the 5th year in, she'd be the one to be killed. That's right, he thought. She did say that. The 5th year, that's this year. The festival is... that's right, it's in June. If he remembered correctly, it happens on the last Sunday of the month. Akasaka looked at the calendar. It was June 1983. Although there was still some time, the death she predicted for herself was coming up. The girl who predicted Yuki's accident was prophesized a mysterious incident would occur annually for the next 5 years. I meant to say also. I don't know if I said something else there. I'm really losing my mind. If they'd actually been happening, then it would happen again this year. Akasaka wondered if Ueshi was still at the Okonomiya PD. If the annual incident she predicted actually was taking place, he would know. In other words, he can confirm if Rika Furude was going to be killed or not with a phone call to Ueshi. The girl who predicted her own death had muttered that she didn't want to die. Muttered? No. It was clearly a plea for help. A young girl who was trapped in this fathomless, bizarre tradition of a village she couldn't escape had sought help from him, an outsider. She paid his reward in advance, in the form of foreseeing Yuki's accident. He had to get to her. He had to go save her. A flood of emotions filled him up. He felt as though he had finally remembered something he was never supposed to forget. That's right. He had to go to Hinamizawa. He had to save the girl who asked him for help.
はい、沖宮署でございます。
すみません。そちらの刑事課に現在も大石クラウド氏は在籍されておりますでしょうか。もしもいらっしゃったならお願いしたいのですが。
失礼ですが、どちら様でしょうか。
警視庁の赤坂とお伝えください。
Ueshi was a very lively person, but he had been old even back then. Maybe it had already transferred somewhere else, or maybe he'd since retired. But if he was still there, he'd be happy to hear from Akasaka. He sure had a unique laugh. One that you may even call evil.
外線からお電話です。東京の警視庁からですよ。
東京？そりゃまた遠くからはるばるどちら様ですかね。はい、もしもし。え？こりゃ懐かしい。どうです？お元気にしてましたか？な。
And there we go. There we go. Okay, so I don't want to end this episode short, and I feel like a little under 30 minutes is short. So I'm personally going to call it here, but we'll record even more tomorrow when I am hopefully feeling better. We got an achievement out of this. It is the first miracles. All right. Yeah, so let me go to the next part here. We obviously don't have any tips. We read all of them in the form of fragments. But yeah, I will continue recording tomorrow. Hopefully I'm feeling better. And we'll have a little bit of a longer episode here, which I think would be better for the playthrough, because I think we're already on... This is the 21st episode. We're pretty far along in the episode count already. And I don't know if that's a good thing or not. But yes, future me will continue this. And I'm back. Alright, let us continue on. Hanyu has already grown used to being around us. Since Rika-chan and Sadako are her age, she's become especially close with them. Of course, Rena and Mion are looking after her too. Rena told me something the day Hanyu joined the class. She said that Hanyu has been close to us for a long time, and that she's been watching us play, that she always wanted to join us. I still can't remember seeing her before, but somehow I can believe it. Hanyu has accepted all the things that surprised me at first, as if she knew about them all along. She knows everything about us. And it seems she's truly excited about finally being able to join in.
羽生もすっかり僕たちの仲間に溶け込みましたのです。
だな。なんだかずっと前からそうだったように感じるよ。そんなはずはないのにな。
そんなことありませんです。ずっと僕たちのそばにいましたですよ。
あれ、リカちゃんもそんなこと言うんだな。レナも言ってたよ。俺だけが気づいてなかったのかな。
圭一は鈍感だからきっと気づかなかったに違いないのです。
Yeah, you tell him.
みー。
ち、どうせ俺は鈍感ですよだ。
はわわお。リカと圭一が座り込んでいますのです。疲れましたですか？羽生が疲れ知らずなだけなのです。僕たちは遊びすぎてヘトヘトなのですよ。
Oh hey, my dogs are barking.
だって僕はずっとみんなと一緒に遊びたかったから、これくらいでは遊び足りないのです。もっともっと遊びますですよ。はわわ
う。元気だな。ところで羽生さ、その頭のそれ。
I was literally about to bring that up.
遊んでて落ちちゃわないのか？
Hanyu has horns on her head. I thought that it was a hair accessory of sorts, so I didn't want her to lose it while playing. I was going to offer to hold it for her while she ran around. But Hanyu's face clouded over and she apologetically held onto the horns.
圭一、羽生のは取れませんのです。
え、あ、そうなのか？変なこと言ってごめん。
やっぱり角なんかがあるとおかしいでしょうか。おかしくなんかないよ。キュートでかいよ。
そうそう。
Kei-chan even has a horn between his legs, don't you? Though it's hard and What kind of horn is between his legs? What kind?
相変わらずレナさんのパンチだけは見切れませんわね。大丈夫ですの、ミオンさん。顔面がへこんでますわよ。
Everyone laughed except Hanyu, who didn't seem to get it. I shouldn't have said anything. I bet she doesn't like to talk about her horns. But if I try to apologize, I think things will get even more complicated. As I thought about what to say, Rena took the girls over to the shrine gate.
気にしなくていいのですよ。羽生も気にしないようにしているのですが、まだ修行が足りないということなのです。
やっぱ気にしてたんだな。すまん。これからは気をつけるぜ。
羽生は大昔にこのひなみ沢にやってきました。
あ、やっぱりそうだったんだ。だよな。村の中のことを転校生にしちゃ随分詳しかったしな。
羽生がひなみ沢に住む前、どこに住んでいたのかはよく知りません。
Where'd my nice music go? I want it back. I asked her once, but all she said was that it was a place I wouldn't understand. Hanyu said that she, or rather Hanyu's people, couldn't live there anymore. They looked for a new place to live for a long time. They traveled a very long way before arriving in Hinamizawa. There is a beautiful swamp in the area, and that was exactly what Hanyu's people were looking for. Ah yes, I also travel for a swamp, even in Minecraft. But there was a village nearby where people lived. To show respect to the original inhabitants of the area was law among wandering people like Hanyu's. Her clan decided to live peacefully and coexist with the villagers. However, their attempts to coexist didn't go well. The villagers were too childish and immature to accept these newcomers. They strongly rejected them and caused a terrible, tragic disaster. Sounds familiar. Hanyu said that she took their form and descended upon this land in order to subdue the disaster. However, she couldn't just hide her horns. The forbidden ancient documents say that Hanyu descended into the Furude Shrine, appearing as she does today. It also states the following: Hanyu's people can't live anywhere other than this village. They can also only live by coexisting with the villagers. The Furude Shrine's priest once rejected them, claiming that coexistence was impossible if mixing with the wandering people's blood caused the villagers to become demons. But the young heir of the Furude Shrine fell in love with Hanyu, and when their child was born, the priest had to reconsider. Oh, wandering people who cannot hide your horns, if you wish to settle in this land, if you wish to settle with our blood, then I shall consider granting your wish. However, as the demon's blood mixed with the villagers, it became hard to tell who was human and who was demon. The villagers began to cast suspicion on one another, haunted by that paranoia. Unless all of that was resolved, coexistence would be impossible. For you and us to coexist, we must lay down several laws for us to follow. They will be very strict, and I'm very sorry for imposing these upon you who have lived in peace until now. However, as long as those rules are followed, this village will be free from demonic disaster. Very well, the rules will be followed, but much blood has already been shed in the village. The anger, sins, and corruption people bear cannot be cleansed. The one law of the human world is that sins are atoned for with life. I see. If you say it's your way to let someone take on all responsibility and bury the sins with them, then we'll do that. However, wouldn't people end up pushing responsibility on each other because nobody wants to die? Exactly. That's the ugly demon in the world of man. No one will accept their own sins but only foist them onto each other. Since they can only clear the balance with their lives, everyone refuses to pay, and the sins just keep adding up. Without cleansing them, they stagnate, and people cast them upon each other forever, doubting each other and passing them around. I see. If that is the unopposable law of this world, and you yourselves are troubled by this law, then in exchange for coexisting with us, I shall grant you a world where people do not blame their sins on each other. What kind of world is it? So long as mankind exists, they will commit sins and give rise to corruption. How could that all be erased without foisting it onto someone else? Let me bear all the sins and corruption born from man, and purify my soul. Let all sins rest not with man. If they are borne upon myself, then man will not need to force themselves on each other. What are you saying? Are you really going to make yourself into a sacrifice? Someone has to take on the sins, otherwise they won't be cleansed. That's the law of your world, isn't it? Excuse me. A different ancient document also states the following. Of course it's a forbidden one too. Only the head of the Furude family is allowed to read it. Nobody else, not even the other heads of the three families. It tells that unrest grew in people's minds, that the villagers' evil hearts collected in the swamp and gave rise to demons. The Furude Shrine's priest explained that the rule of all evil is the demon god of the swamp and led the young villagers there. By the swamp, they found a demon mocking the unrest in people's hearts. The young villagers fought bravely, captured the demon, and dragged it to the Furude Shrine. The priest cleansed the demon god, opened her abdomen, and dragged out her organs. He chopped them up and washed them down the river, or the stream. Same shit. And then threw the body in the swamp. Then people regained their sanity. Those who had been suspicious of each other became friendly, and they all shared in the joy of peace again. If these forbidden ancient documents are real, then the object of the villagers' worship, Oyashiro-sama, was captured by the villagers, forced to bear all their sins, and torn to death. Plus, it's clearly written that the demons appeared after unrest grew in people's hearts. In other words, the demons were forced to bear the sin of discord that rested with man long before they arrived. Oyashiro-sama was a god who took on people's sins to mend conflicts between them. People eventually came to honor her, and it's said that became the foundation of faith in Oyashiro-sama. I don't understand exactly what that means, but I know one thing. When none of us humans would draw the losing straw, she offered to draw it in our stead. To prove it, we cleanse our filth by letting cotton absorb it and drift it down the stream during the Watanagashi festival. There's no shame or shifting of responsibility involved. Until that system was created, we were simply demons who pushed our filth and our responsibility on each other. We could only cleanse our own sins by blaming someone else and sacrificing him by cutting open his abdomen. And Hanyu took on that job. A purification ceremony without a human life. A system that forgives people for their sins. That is the origin of the cult of Oyashiro-sama, which blames not people for their sins but the curse. Those documents were sealed away. If they weren't, people would find out that the object of their own faith was falsely blamed and killed by their own ancestors. Hanyu apologizes. She takes in people's sins and keeps apologizing. When people can't deal with their own sins anymore, she accepts them. When Hanyu takes over, people are cleansed, and they are allowed to keep living. Demons take on sins by becoming cotton to absorb them. They are exterminated and washed down the stream, and then the village is forgiven. They are forgiven for their sins. If that's all true, then Hanyu, or rather Oyashiro-sama, is such a tragic existence. I've asked Hanyu about this before. Then she told me the following story. 4 people are stuck in a snowy mountain cabin. They play a game where each sit in one of the 4 corners. It's a fairly well-known story. It's in the middle of winter. They're all getting sleepy. If they fall asleep, they'll die. So one of them comes up with an idea. They're sitting in the 4 corners of the room, so someone just has to walk clockwise to the next corner and wake up the person sitting in that corner. The one who just walked will sit in that corner, and the one who just woke up will get up, walk to the next corner, and wake up the person sitting there. If they keep doing that, nobody will fall asleep. People who know this story won't need an explanation, but this doesn't work with 4 people. When the first person gets up, their corner becomes empty. So after everyone takes turns, the 4th person goes to the next corner, which is an empty one. They sit down and fall asleep. So the game is over right there, and everyone freezes to death. In other words, to play this game, you need more than 4 people. You need one more person in order to be saved. People usually tell this as a ghost story, They usually say that this was actually a group of 5 people, but one was already dead, and thanks to that ghost, they're able to continue living until the next morning. Hanyu once told me that she's like that 5th person. If she can make everything run smoothly by joining a circle of people, then it's very similar to how the telephone game in the mountain cabin manages to function without breaking. Hanyu can complete a circle that can't be realized by people alone. Then those people can live peacefully. She's an existence that completes a circle. Is she bothered by her horns because it reminds her of the time when she was called a demon and punished for the sins that she took in? Is her subconscious still tormenting her with thoughts that those who have horns ought to be persecuted?
あの角は生まれつきです。それを意味嫌われ、いじめられたこともありましたのです。
そうなんか？そりゃますます悪いことを言っちまったな。
そして羽生はその角があるがゆえに全ての罪を引き受け、清算するというとても大きなお役目を引き受け、全うし神と崇められたのです。
え？神？
僕の独り言なのです。忘れて大丈夫なのですよ。
Nobody knows who Hanyu really is. Is she really a divine existence that descended from a higher place? Or is she simply an unlucky girl who became a sacrifice just because she had a pair of horns? Nobody knows. But this girl's blood was blended with the Furude family's blood, and that blood has descended into me. Our legends state that if the Furude family has a girl for their firstborn child, for 8 generations in a row, that 8th child will be a reincarnation of Oyashiro-sama. I don't know exactly what that means, but I'm that 8th generation. Is that why I was the only person who could see Hanyu? 8 generations is a very long time. Maybe that's how long it took for all the sins Hanyu assumed to be cleared. 8 represents infinity. It's a very lucky number. Often curses uttered will contain "I'll curse you for 7 generations," but the 8th lies beyond that. In other words, 8 possesses such good fortune that it can forgive great curses and sins that span 7 generations. It's a number with power. It's the time Hanyu needed to cleanse all the sins she took in from the humans. Hanyu and her people simply wanted to coexist with us. But Hanyu had to become a sacrifice. Her stomach was cut open, and its contents washed down the stream. Oh, excuse me. And then she was thrown into the swamp. And so, the Furude family has been waiting. They waited for a very long time for her to come back. They kept our traditions alive, waiting forever and ever for her return. According to legend, the name Furude was made by adding a horn to the character for fortune teller. The Furude family rose with Hanyu's bloodline. The Furude family rose when Hanyu's bloodline was combined with that human being's, or that of. Goddamn, I cannot read. Hanyu is the ancestor of the Furude family as well as the mother of us all. When I was little, Hanyu taught me a lot more things than my mother did. It's no wonder. I'm her descendant. The curse on the clan who exorcised and buried their very own mother was finally absolved after 8 generations, what seemed like an eternity. And then she met me, her descendant, the final generation of the Furude family. Sometimes when I think about that, I feel like there must be some important meaning to this hapless fate thrust upon me. But what kind of meaning could the trial I face, the trial of breaking through the obstacles sealing my fate, have upon the curse that plagued Hanyu and the Furude family for over a millennium? 1,000 years is simply too long a period to communicate thoughts and intentions correctly. Hanyu has become the curse we call Oyashiro-sama, though she originally was a means of salvation. She has become a chain that binds people. The rules about coexisting were misinterpreted as a law that binds villagers to this place, and that continued until the Meiji era. And while the village whines once again, blow toward the not whines, it's wins, sorry, goddamn. I was like, whines? And while the village wins once again blow toward the misunderstanding of isolation thanks to the dam conflict, how does that play into my meeting with Hanyu and this motley fate we're trapped in? I haven't lived long enough to be able to understand that. The only thing I can say for sure is that the Furude family originated when Hanyu's bloodline mixed with that of humans, and the line's final descendant, me, finally met with its ancestor. The Furude bloodline bears a cursed history of placing all of man's sins onto its mother and killing her. Now the beginning and end of that line have met. Hanyu always wanted to join everyone, yet she couldn't hide her horns. Even so, she still wished to be an existence that completes a circle. It's a child's job to bury their parents. But mother, I've never heard that it's a child's job to kill and bury their parents. Don't ask, child. I'm not human. My horns are proof that I'm a demon. A demon's job is to take on the calamities of the human world. Bearing the calamities of this chaotic world and cleansing the unrest of mankind's hearts is my role. Then mother, why do you have to be the one? People's sins are people's sins. They aren't yours. Listen, child. People live with their sins. They can't live without making someone else take the blame. Nobody wants to take the blame, so they shift that responsibility around. That is a demon, the true demon disrupting the world of man. By bearing it myself, man may be cleansed, and mankind can be freed from their destiny of doubt and conflict. Let all the sins, the filth, the karma, and the curse come to me. Then attack me, purify me, wash me down the stream, and throw me in the swamp. A human will not do, so it is the fate of one not human to accept that role. If a human were made to bear it, then mankind would not be freed from the demon of doubt. I don't understand. I don't understand, Mother. Mother, you have horns. Are you saying that you aren't human just because you have horns? That even if you are human, the horns make you non-human? Even if you have horns, you're human to me. My child, you're the only one who's ever said that. Even if everyone calls me this or that, you'll still call me human. What is passed down in the Furude's, many forbidden scrolls, the ones unknown to even the heads of the three families sealed in the altar in the shrine storage. Understanding that would probably require about as much time as I've spent repeating time. Yet once you understand that, perhaps you'll better understand the smile Hanyu wears as she innocently plays with everyone. I heard Mion yell in surprise. Something must have happened.
なんだどうしたんだ
羽生さんがそこでふざけてて転んで斜面を転げ落ちていったんですわ。羽生ちゃん大丈夫？
綺麗に転がってったけど捻挫とかしてないかな。行こう行こう。
Hanyu had been playing on the slope and tumbled down it. There's a road just below the slope. Mion and the others went down the stairs to get her. Let's go. I hope she isn't injured. Yeah, can she get injuries now? When I got there, I saw Tomatake-san and Takano-san. They were taking care of her.
これはどういうことなんだい？急に彼女が転がり落ちてきてね。
ずいぶん綺麗に転がってきたわね。でも頭をゴチンとやってしまったみたいだから、後でコブになってしまうかもね。よく冷やしておいた方がいいわよ。
羽生 私たちの声が聞こえます？ほら、指は何本に見えますの？はぁ
She sounded disoriented, but didn't appear to be injured. What a relief for everyone. I bet she's just feeling dizzy from rolling.
はぁ、でもよかったね。怪我がなくて。
いやいや、しかし転がってった先に看護師さんがいてくれたなんてできすぎだね。
あら、非番の時の私は野鳥撮影家なのよ。ねえ、二郎さん。
まあね、そういうことさ。
まあひなみざわっ子ならこのくらいで怪我はできねえよな。羽生ももう立派なひなみざわの仲間ってことだぜ。
羽生ちゃんっていうの？見かけない子ね。新しいお友達？
ええ、そうですわよ。月曜日に転校してきたばかりなんですのよ。
これ、何？変わってるわね。おもちゃ？
Takano-san tried to poke at one of Hanyu's horns. And they'd be an interesting hair accessory if they were an accessory.
それは羽生ちゃんのチャームポイントなので取っちゃダメなんです。
あら、そうなの？私はあまり可愛くないと思うんだけど。だってほら。
Don't you fucking say it.
化け物。
Oh, she just said it.
みたいじゃない？
Suddenly, Hanyu moaned as if suffocating.
高野、羽生は化け物じゃありませんです。二度と言ったら許さないのです。
そうだよ、高野さん。人の趣味に悪いよ。
ごめんなさいね。決してそんなつもりはなかったんだけど。
Rika-chan said it rather firmly. I'm sure Hanyu doesn't want to hear that word. Sometimes Takano-san says things in a derogatory way without realizing it herself. But I guess there are things you can't or shouldn't say. Hanyu was looking at Takano-san with a complicated look on her face. After seeing that expression, Takano-san realized she might have hurt her feelings. She apologized and left with Tomatake-san.
大丈夫？羽生、綺麗に転げ落ちたから、大して怪我はないそうです。リカ、今の人、今の人、高野ですよ。高野。
Hanyu repeated Takano-san's name. All of a sudden, I grew worried that she hit her head or something. Hanyu stood straight up and grabbed Rika-chan's collar.
リカ、高野です。高野。そうですよ。高野ですよ。
Oh, Rika doesn't remember.
違う、リカ、高野です。高野、覚えてないのですか？知ってるわよ。
Oh, she does know.
高野美代でしょ？入江診療所の。思い出せないのですか？ごめん、羽生。何の話？リカ、そんな。
This is the last one. The last one. She finally imprinted herself with the true enemy's name while enduring the pain of her stomach being cut open. And yet she can't remember. Rika Furude has failed to inherit the memory of the fragments. Well, game over. See you guys. What should we play next? You know, I hear Euphoria is a bunch of fun. It's about like a guy and some of his female classmates or something like that, and they go through like these cool challenges or something. I think that'd be a pretty good follow-up to this. You know, now that we literally can't continue, now that everything is doomed.
Akasaka-san!
All right. Okay, so yeah, we'll save whatever's happening next time for the next episode. I guess Ushi's really fucking excited to see Akasaka. I mean, he seems to be like the key to the puzzle, the final piece, if you will. So, I'm all for it. But I'm not like overhyped or anything. It was just very surprising in Chapter 7. Alrighty, well, I wonder what is going to happen in the next episode, because Rika needs to remember what went down. Because if she doesn't, then... Ugh. Yikes. Jinkies. What the fuck did we just spend like 10 hours doing? It wasn't 10 hours, was it? Definitely didn't feel like 10 hours. A whole bunch of episodes, let's go with that. Going through all those goddamn fragments. We went through them for a fucking reason, come on. Okay. Yeah, thank you all for watching this episode. If you enjoyed, be sure to leave a like, subscribe, all that fancy jazz, and I will see you all in the next one. Take it easy.